I've been using and talking about the Fujifilm X-T5 for quite a while now, and in all the videos where I talk about this camera, a lot of questions come back often. So in today's video, I just want to answer to the top 10 questions about the Fujifilm X-T5. Alright, so question number 1, how do the dials feel? Well, this is only an opinion, but for me the dials are fine. I see a lot of people out there saying that they feel plasticky. I don't think so. I would say though that they are a bit looser than what you are used to on the X-T4, for example, or on the X-H2S, but they are not plasticky at all. A lot of people are complaining because the X-T5 is now fully made in China. But I think that the quality control process of Fujifilm is still the same and the camera still has a good quality. The dials are fine, they turn perfectly, I don't have any issue with them. Yes, they are a bit looser than on the previous model, they sound a bit different, they kind of have a higher tone than the X-T4. But overall, they're still pretty good to use and I don't think that you will have any problem using them. Question number 2, how is the autofocus performing? I made a dedicated video about this, and if you want to know in details how it performs, I invite you to watch it. But I would say that the X-T5 performs really well in terms of autofocus. Whether we're talking about the eye autofocus or the subject detection, the Fujifilm X-T5 is sticky. In one of the previous videos that I made, I had some mixed results sometimes, and I did, after one of you suggested it, disable the AF plus MF functions, and I did observe much better result in terms of autofocus. So if you own a Fujifilm X-T5 and you have some mixed results and some mixed hit rates, try to disable the AF plus MF and see if this helps you. If I had to compare it to the X-H2S, for example, I would say that it's a little bit less sticky than the X-H2S and obviously not as fast, but overall it's pretty good. Is the low light performance of the X-T5 good? Well, it's pretty damn good. For 40 megapixel, you really have to pixel peep to find a lot of noise in your pictures. I shot that up to 12,800 ISO in a comparison video with the X-T4, and I have to say that while the X-T5 had a little bit more noise than the X-T5, after 6,400 ISO, the performance of the X-T5 is actually comparable or slightly better of the X-T4 with higher megapixel count. So that means that the sensor of the X-T5 is extremely good, and I don't think that you will find any noise problem if you shoot in normal condition or even in low light condition. It is very usable. Again, if you want to have a more detailed comparison and more information about this, I invite you to watch the video that I linked right now. What about buffering issue on the X-T5? Well, the X-T5 produces 40 megapixel pictures. You're not using CF Express, you're using SD cards. Depending on which SD card you use, you might have different results. In my case, I use this particular SD card on screen, and while shooting raw lossless compressed, and I don't shoot a high frame rate usually for a long amount of time. If I want to shoot sport, I would use the X-T4 or the X-H2S. But in the photography session where I used the Fujifilm X-T5, I did not have huge buffering issues. Of course, if you continuously shoot with the camera and let it go and expect it not to have any buffering issues, that is not the camera that you might want to take. And if you're looking for that 40 megapixel without much buffering, then it might be better for you to go with the X-H2. Will the lenses that are not compatible with the 40 megapixel sensor work correctly on the X-T5? Okay, so this is quite an important point, right? It is not because the lens cannot render the full resolution of the sensor, the 40 megapixel of the sensor, that it will not work on the camera. Basically what it means is that with a non-compatible 40 megapixel lens, you might not be able to resolve all the details of your image. So you might have a slight decrease of the quality of the image. Although I kind of disagree with that, but maybe let's talk about it in another video. But your lens will definitely work on the Fujifilm X-T5. As long as it's an X mount, it should work. That's basically what you have to look for. What kind of mount is your lens compatible with? And just to talk a little bit more about that 40 megapixel compatible topic, I use my 10-24 on the Fujifilm X-T5. I still see tons of details in the shots that I take, so don't worry about it. I think that you don't necessarily need to renew all your lenses because you want to move on to the Fujifilm X-T5. I think you should try to use the lenses that you have with the X-T5 if you want to upgrade and see for yourself the result. But honestly, between what they consider as compatible and not compatible, you might not see that much of a difference. What settings do you use on the Fujifilm X-T5? Again, I discuss all my settings in a dedicated video where I talk about my settings for video, my setting for photography. But what I would say is that usually I always shoot full manual when it comes for exposure. So that means that I manually choose my ISO, my shutter speed and my aperture. I like to shoot in single focus mode most of the time and use the back button focus setup. That way I can lock the focus that I want and take the shot and recompose afterward. I also like having functions like the eye autofocus right here and the animal autofocus right here so that I can enable them or disable them real quick, and that way I can, depending on what I am shooting, I can have a correct focus. And because I also do product and food photography, I like having my self-timer accessible on the back of my camera so that I can enable it or disable it really quickly. When it comes to autofocus mode, I like single point and I enjoy moving by myself the little joystick to see what I want to focus on. In some specific cases, for example street photography, I would use area. That way I don't have to move things around when people are moving really fast around me, but usually I use single points. Does the Fujifilm X-T5 have a 2x zoom in 4K? Well, I don't think that's the case. I haven't found it. If that's the case, let me know in the comment. But basically that's one of the difference between the X-H2 and the X-T5. The X-H2 has a 2x digital zoom. I haven't seen that function in the X-T5. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I might be wrong. But from what I see in terms of settings in the movie menu, I don't see any digital zoom. So if that's one function that you want, maybe the X-H2 is better. What is the best lens for the Fujifilm X-T5? Honestly, that depends on tons of things. What you shoot, what you like, the focal length that you appreciate, what are your needs in terms of weight, in terms of size, in terms of aperture. It depends on so many things. So one point that I want to mention again is that don't feel like you need to upgrade your lens because you bought an X-T5. Don't feel like you need to go from a 16mm f1.4 to an 18, because it doesn't mean that the 16 won't be able to resolve any details. It doesn't mean that your shots will be completely blurry on the X-T5. That is not the case. Just go with the lens that you enjoy shooting. Of course, if autofocus is a must for you, then you might think about newer lenses that have linear motor. But overall, I would say that I cannot answer this question. That's one question that I cannot answer if you don't give me more details about it. Does it overheat? I have used it for, 3-4 months now, maybe 5, I forgot. And I have never even once have any problem with overheating. Now, I don't shoot video continuously for 3 hours. That's not what I do. For this channel, I would use the X-T5 sometime to shoot 4K for like 30-40 minutes sometimes to shoot those videos. But overall, I have never had any problem with it. I don't have any fan, I'm not cooling it down, and it's not particularly cold at the moment in Japan. It's about 20 degrees and I don't have any overheating issue. So I would say no, but maybe some people shooting in specific condition will tell you something different. And finally, is there a video limitation on the Fujifilm X-T5? So this is one of the main difference between the X-T4 and the X-T5. On the X-T4 you had a 30 minutes limit for 4K recording. On the X-T5 they removed that, and supposedly you should be able to shoot, I think, 4K for up to 90 minutes on the Fujifilm X-T5 without interruption. So I think that as long as you have battery and you have memory to store, you should be able to shoot no problem using the Fujifilm X-T5. Alright, so do you have any other question about the Fujifilm X-T5? Let me know down in the comment and I will try to reply to as many questions as possible. Let's make sure that whoever wants to buy this camera has all the replies that they want in the comments. So yeah, I'm counting on you to ask questions or reply to the questions that you already have the answer to. Thank you for watching today's video, and if you've missed it, check out this video right here where I review the Fujifilm X-T5 in more details. See you there.